Tuesday was a great display of where our community sits and the feelings from our staff on the idea of closing an elementary school. And it's really hard and difficult and challenging conversations, but it was a good platform for the school district and the school board to hear the thoughts of our community and to really hear that perspective of what Columbia does for our students in our community. So that was it was hard night. I also appreciated the opportunity to share with our community kind of where the district is from a budget perspective.
Was the district expecting this level of response?
We were, based on a variety of information that was, getting to us, and information from the community, information from our own staff, and then just the sheer amount of concern that comes when you have a decision that is this big.
Have you been receiving a lot of emails or phone calls from members of the public?
Yes. The school board and I have been receiving numerous emails from parents and from staff and community members as well too. So the outpouring of concern is not just from, wasn't just isolated to Tuesday. So
I think, as we both know, Columbia parents and staff have expressed that they were blindsided by the news.
Right.
Going back to Friday, when Columbia staff first learned about the closure, why was Friday the day that needed to be done?
That's a great question. And I will say that we had some things that happened internally in our system that escalated the need for us to talk to Columbia Elementary sooner than we were prepared to. And so that situation we're still dealing with. And it started a very painful approach to this process.
State law requires that a school board adopt a policy that includes a 90-day period before a final decision is made to close a school. And in that 90 days, there needs to be a public hearing. The decision to announce the closure before the 90 days seems a little backwards. Why were staff notified of the closure before that 90-day period?
Well, because of the previous question, what I mentioned internally, we had to let our staff know very quickly what was happening in case they would to hear about it from other places or other means. We did not want that to happen. We also wanted to get that information out quickly because of the magnitude of the budget situation that we're in. And felt that there was still enough time left in the school year for us to enact the 90-day period and all of the obligations that are necessary there. This morning we've been triangulating on a couple of dates. We'd like to do 2 public hearings as opposed to just one, so that we can hear from our community, and maybe it doesn't go quite as late as it did the other night, and we can get to a venue where everyone can fit inside and actually be comfortable and hear all of the concerns and comments.
Why were parents not informed the same day as the staff?
That's a great question. We delivered a press release about 24 hours, well, a little less than 24 hours afterward. But the goal of Friday's meeting was to get ahead of our staff communication so that they would not be impacted as dramatically as they might if they heard it from other colleagues or social media sources. And then we want to get that information out to the rest of the community. So we have intentionally, we didn't get to our parents in time, and that's hard.
Where does this idea of a closure stem from? And I'm curious about how far back as well. Board President Julie Norton said on Tuesday that this was the first board meeting where this was ever addressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the conversation, I think, for school closure, it's one that is kind of in the back of our mind as kind of the worst case scenario and a place where we don't want to jump into and don't want to spend time. But I believe, as the numbers were being exposed to us, I mean, we've had to have that idea in the back of our mind as well too. And so I think that as a district, I think we're in a little bit of maybe not denial, but a little bit of that area where we do not want to have to go here until we have all of the facts. And the problem with not the problem, but the actual pace of the budgeting process has us in January kind of knowing what those numbers look like, solidifying those numbers to where our finance team feels like these are actually the numbers that we need to go by. And that's when we realized that, some of our worst fears were going to have to be realized. And so there have been, conversations and dialogue and research and some analysis on what this could look like for the Wenatchee School District if it were to happen. And I think I was just like, nope, nope. If I were to do some things over again, that might look a little different.
So to be specific, you're saying that the closure wasn't specifically addressed until January. The idea of a closure did not come up in December or November. This was a decision made in January.
The idea of a school closure has been one that we have considered, I will say, even into the fall, but it's never been something that has been something where we need to plan for this accordingly. Although we had to plan for it a little bit along the way, but it was something that we did not want to have to do. It's like a worst case scenario. And then when we look at what the plan is from the district perspective with regard to middle school schedules, high school schedules, and the elementary closure, that, as we shared on the board meeting on Tuesday, that doesn't necessarily get us to where we need to be for next year. And so there are still struggles and conversations that are left to have.
Julie also mentioned that this was, and I quote, not necessarily the preferred or desired way we would have liked to be presenting this, end quote, at the board meeting. How else would the board have preferred to go about sharing this news?
I think we would have, the board would have preferred to have another budget committee meeting and perhaps a board workshop, as she mentioned later in the board meeting. Those are the preferred routes to go in a situation like this. We want to make sure that everyone has the information that is necessary to move forward in a proper process.
And once again, Julie also asked about the redistricting of boundary lines. Mm-hmm. And you said that Davis Demographics was looking into that, and the results were not out yet. I think you said they would be out late February, early March.
That's what we're hoping, yes.
Why was the closure announced before those results were done?
There's the timeline of activities involving Davis Demographics. We contracted with them because of the budget process and what they do with just looking at demographics. I think when we had further consideration that we might be looking at a school closure, that's when we asked them to update the work that they were going to be doing and to look at our boundaries as well. And that's good information for us to have. We usually it looks like it's been every 4 years in the past that we've gotten this demographic information. We may want to speed that up based on what's happening in our community, in our valley, and our declining enrollment, so we have that information.
Whose decision was it to tell the staff that the school would close?
The school closure decision came from the school principal and myself.
And how involved was the school board in making this decision?
In making the decision, the plan for the school board was aware of the plan that the school district had put into place, and they knew that they were going to be deciding on the plan later on.
Does the district have a plan on how students and staff will be reassigned to schools, and will families have an opportunity to choose the school they send their child?
We are working on a plan. That work will come from the work from Davis Demographics as well, and our parents will be given an opportunity to attend one of our schools in the district. There won't necessarily be choice. It'll be based on where folks live in accordance to where the schools are located as well. We do have our choice process that parents can use as well.
Based off comments I could hear from the Columbia crowd, specifically at the board meeting on Tuesday, the numbers presented relating to the enrollment of Columbia may not be up to date, At least on the OSPI website, the enrollment numbers show there are 340 students at Columbia, not 314. How does a discrepancy in numbers happen?
The numbers that we used in the board meeting presentation were K-5 numbers. They did not include transition to kindergarten class, so we used K-5 numbers for that evening when the numbers that were presented by staff included their TK program or transition to kindergarten. So those are the 4-year-olds that are at school as well. So yeah, that was a good point.
And I'd like to address some of the comments that I've heard from the public, specifically at the board meeting. A Columbia parent, by the name of Bridget Myers, who spoke at the meeting, as I said. She said, and I quote, "It feels to some of us that there is intentionality behind the announcement of closure and that you were not expecting pushback if it was communicated as a done deal." And quote, "I feel this is perhaps specific to the demographic at Columbia." End quote. Is this decision specific to the demographic at Columbia?
Not necessarily, no. It isn't specific to the demographic of Columbia. And I would say that it doesn't matter what school you talk about closing in any school district. It is, people consider that their home. They consider that their family, away from their family. And there's always going to be pushback. There's always going to be, a hurt community. And we definitely knew that this was not going to be a situation where people aren't going to be upset or talk about it, and we welcome that because Columbia is a great school. They have amazing educators. They have amazing family and students. They've grown to be more than just a neighborhood school. I really feel like, they are a family.
Also pointed out by the public, and specifically Danielle Marchant, who has a contract with the district. The language of the press release sounded as though the decision was final. Mm-hmm. I think as far as Columbia's staff knew on Friday, the decision was final. You were quoted in the press release saying it is the right decision. And the press release says students and staff will be reassigned to other neighboring schools. Was there a final decision made at the time of the press release?
No, the final decision that was made was the district's plan for reducing the budget for 24-25. So that was it came across a little bit more final than it was, and the idea that the school board will ultimately vote on that in May will be the actual reality. And
just to reiterate, as far as the board and the district are concerned, has a final decision been made?
No.
Something you just brought up, actually, this particular school has a distinct relationship with its neighborhood. These kids are walking to school every day and not typically being bused there. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned about the impact a closure would have on that neighborhood?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always impacts. I mean, I can't predict what those impacts would be, but yes, there is a concern. And the concern, I think, right now is where are our staff, where are our students, and where are our families in conjunction with this decision. We know that it was brought on to them in a way that was surprising and felt kind of out of left field. And so really taking time to consider everyone's well-being is the important part right now, and then taking intentional hand-holding process to help people get where they're going to be comfortable.
There is a large concern over the social and emotional well-being of the students who will have to go to a new school. How will the district be handling their transition to ensure that they are adapting well? Very gently,
and looking at that social emotional piece as being the number one way that students feel like they're connected and that they belong in a new building. And we know that transitions are hard. And so we want to be very intentional about what that looks like. And we feel like our elementary school programs have strong SEL programs. We also have it built into our curriculum day. And so we are confident that our teachers are loving and compassionate, and our schools are welcoming, and they're going to embrace their new students.
Does the district have a plan for the building? Would you consider selling the property?
I think that I don't think we would consider selling the property. I mean, I think our hope in the Wenatchee School District is that we are experiencing declining enrollment, but we hope that there's prosperity along the way. We hope that there's opportunities for growth. We are looking internally at ways to think about how we could utilize the building in the next year or two, with maybe some different programming that might be necessary, or some areas of growth in our own district. That would be our first choice, is how can we reuse that in an opportunity to encourage additional enrollment, maybe at the TK level, that transition to kindergarten, or maybe there's another program that we can put there that would be advantageous to our school district. If not, I don't think that we're opposed to looking at how it can be used to help our community in other ways.